right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Free. I don't know why I said it that way, but welcome to Free. Good to be with you tonight. I'm glad you're here. This is a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts, and spiritual refugees. And what we like to do here each and every week is break the silence of addiction and create space for healing, recovery, and spiritual connection. We call this place Free because all the things that set us free, grace, compassion, love, forgiveness, these are the things that are so freely given by God. So if you're with us tonight, it is not by accident, and we're glad you're here. You're here for part 1 of 2 of our belonging series. We're going to talk about belonging. As I mentioned last week, isolation is a major problem in our culture. Addiction is going up. Depression is going up, anxiety, suicide. Isolation is a major problem. It's why we need to talk about belonging. So we're going to spend 2 weeks talking about the goodness of belonging. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong, if you have people in your life who felt like they didn't belong, somewhere along the way they were told they didn't belong, some religious narrative came and told them they weren't welcome, they didn't belong, well, this one's for you. So if you know those people, hit the share button, share this live service with others who you think might need it. So excited for tonight. Our boy Arthur is in the house. He's going to share his story. He's got a powerful story. You're going to hear from him in a few minutes. But before we get there, I want you all to meet, for those of you that don't know her, most of you know her, Saman Meyer. She's the lead of our home team. She's going to tell you some of the happenings happening here at Free. So Saman, take it away.
Hey everybody, welcome to Free. It's good to see you guys tonight. So happy you could make it. First off, we're going to talk about reopening, right? Everybody wants to know that.
Woo-hoo!
Woo! We have to defer to the United Methodist Church as well as the county. So right now we're still a ways off for Saturday, but we're keeping a really close eye on it. We should be able to open for 12-stick groups fairly soon. We're still, we're hoping like really, really soon. It's looking that way. So this is what we're doing. We've been working on protocols to get the space open. We have a team in place, and we're working to get the space ready for you. We're getting it clean and spick and span. So we're so excited to have you guys back. Let's see, pop that trunk. Oh my gosh. So great to see so many people bring the goods. You guys delivered. Thanks to you. We collect over 2,000 pounds of food. In monetary value, that's over $4,000. Mind-blowing. So grateful for you. So grateful that you showed up. The truck was full to the top. Thank you. We appreciate the outpouring of love for the community. Okay, the app. Oh my goodness, the app. We're so excited about that, and we're getting so close to launching that. We are almost there. This is what you can find on there. First off, you're going to find info about Free. Anything that you need to know is going to be in there. There's also a space to let you sign up to volunteer, to be part of the home team, to be part of the tech team. It's going to be amazing. Let's see, it's going to also talk about recovery meetings. Anything you need to know about the meetings that are going on here will be there as well. All the information. And lastly, but super cool, all of the video content that you've seen or maybe not seen over the past weeks, they're all going to be there. All the series are going to be there, and this is going to be a game changer. You can like rewatch stuff. You can even, I've just been told, you can even have it playing in the background while you're doing other stuff. So if you're driving, you can listen to Rev Ryan while you're driving. Who doesn't want to do that? Okay, that's all I have for the announcements. Back to Ryan.
Thank you, Saman. That's why we have you doing this kind of thing. All right. Thank you, Saman. So much good happening here. Thank you to all of you who participated and popped that trunk. So cool. As Saman said, y'all just poured out love in this community. And that was such a cool thing to see happen and be a part of. And we got some gelato and Italian ice. How great was that? All right, y'all, I want to, Tammy's going to join me in just a moment because we're going to start with celebrations. If you're new with us tonight, first we just say welcome. We're glad you're here. If you're new, the way we start in this community is by celebrating together. We don't ignore the hard stuff. We don't go around it. We actually deal with the hard stuff here, but we don't start with the hard stuff. We end with it. So we start with celebrations and we end with heartaches. We like to celebrate together, and this community likes to celebrate with you, and we believe that God is celebrating with us. So you're going to have 3 minutes to put in your celebrations. Put them in the comments. Let this community surround you with love. Let them clap with you and for you. And I say it every week, but literally throughout the week, thousands of people will be celebrating with you. So let them in. Do an act of vulnerability and type it in the comments, even if you're not used to it. Let us in on your celebration so we can do it together. It might be a sobriety anniversary. It might be new jobs, transitions, babies being born, whatever the good stuff is in life, whatever the stuff is that you're celebrating, homecomings of certain people, whatever it is, put it in the comments. Let people celebrate with you. You have 3 minutes, and then we'll come back together and read some of those celebrations with the community. All right, y'all, 3 minutes.
See the light of a new day dawning. Feel the love from a beating heart. You catch a ride to the top of the world. This is where we start. No, we can't make it last forever. We gotta use all the time we have. And you know that we'll never say never if we ever get the chance. And it's good to be alive. It's good to be alive. This feeling's running high. Life is calling and the world is beautiful. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. There's a winding road we're choosing, looking for a brand new day. And up ahead there's an open door, now we'll find our way. There's a hope for a new tomorrow. We can dream that we'll rise above. Let me be your guide to follow, and you'll always feel the love. And it's good to be alive. It's good to be alive. This feeling's running high. Life is calling and the world is beautiful. Na 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 na. Seize the moment and stop right now. Play the music and live. Well, it's good to be alive. So good to be alive. This feeling's running high. Oh, life is calling.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We were just dancing in the house. Lots of celebrations. Such a cool part of the evening to look down at the phone and our iPad and to see your celebrations and to celebrate with you. Tammy, you want to take the first one?
I would love to.
All right.
Hey, Jamie. Housing opportunities are opening for me and Jay. That's excellent to hear.
Way to go, Jamie. Ashley says, celebrating a sponsee getting 60 days today. God is good. I'm assuming she means 60 days
so good.
sober. Awesome, Ashley. Awesome to the sponsee getting that 60 days. Keep
Good
on
stuff.
doing it. That's the good stuff. Yeah.
Hey, Kavita. She met a newcomer today. Instant sobriety boost. Good stuff.
All right, Kavita. Saman says hi. Matt Naraki is with us tonight. Matt says, celebrating God, providing my entire strength through darkness. Yeah, that's the good stuff,
love
brother.
that.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Matt.
Yeah. Good to see you here, Matt.
Hey, Danny, could you, there's something on the monitor screen if you can, on the iPad, actually. Sorry, guys.
From Pam. Pam says, 2 new friends. That is
All right,
good stuff.
Pam.
Hey, Pam, I
Friendship
loved
is
your,
important.
she was dancing on that intro video. Did you see
She
that?
was. Pam, if you
Man.
didn't see it, you'll have to watch the replay. You were dancing on the
And
intro.
working super hard, so we appreciate you.
Jim says, celebrating announcement of our second grandbaby on the way. Congrats to how do you say that?
Chardra?
Chardra and Joey, the beautiful parents of Waverly and her soon-to-be
I
sibling.
love to hear that.
All right. Thank you, Jim. We're celebrating that with you. Congratulations.
Good. Angela says, employed. So cool.
Woo-hoo,
Love it.
go Angela. All right, we'll
Cindy-
take do we have a couple more, Drew?
Yeah, we got a couple more.
All right, Cindy Rapp says, spent time with Austin today, and after delivering 1210 coffee, that's Tammy's special
Yes.
coffee, to their group, Austin told a friend, Ryan is a badass, just saying. Well, thank you, Austin,
Oh,
and
man,
thanks
I
for
love
sharing that
that.
with us, Cindy. That's
yeah,
awesome.
and delivering
Thank you, thank
1210 or white coffee. Oh, thank you, Cindy.
you.
Appreciate that.
Yes, so good.
All
Last
right.
one, all right.
From Ann, daughter will be 50 on Tuesday. Her dad found AA 2.5 months before her birth. He has passed. I'm still grateful for Al-Anon.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, Ann, for sharing
Thanks
that.
for sharing that with us, Ann.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us, Tammy. Don't y'all love it when Tammy joins me up here for celebrations
That's
and
fun to
heartaches?
celebrate with y'all.
Yeah. All right. Thanks
Thanks.
for being with me. And my son just entered, so apparently he's got something to say. All right, y'all. As I said earlier, we are in this first week of our series on belonging. What does it look like to belong? What does it mean to belong? Annie, I'm having another. Sorry, guys, we're having some technical difficulties. It's not showing your iPad on there.
Oh, dang.
Bear with me. We're coming. We're coming.
Do another dance.
Oh, there it is. Danny Colella, by the way, is our digital content director. He works magic around here. There he is. There's Danny. Thank you for being with us, Danny. We always appreciate it. So, like I was saying, our first week in this belonging series, and y'all, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to recently that say they feel lonely. Adults and children, and maybe you're one of them. You feel like you're doing this thing alone. You feel like you don't belong. Yeah. It's why we need to talk about belonging. Now, the former Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, I've mentioned him before. He's one of the gurus on the research of loneliness, and he recently said, and I'll read his quote to you. He said, "When I began my time as Surgeon General, I started to recognize that many of the stories that I was hearing from people in small towns and big cities all across America were stories about addiction, about violence, about depression and anxiety, but behind them were threads of loneliness. And people wouldn't say to me, my name is Megan, I'm struggling with loneliness, but they would say, I feel like I have to deal with all these problems by myself. I feel like we're out there all alone and no one's looking out for us. I feel like I'm invisible." And time after time, when I began to hear this, it struck me that there's a much deeper pattern here, a pattern that I began to see as loneliness. You see, loneliness is a problem. It's why we need to talk about belonging. So let's talk a bit about belonging, shall we? Now, there's a historian of Christianity. Her name is Dinah Butler Bass. And in much of her work, she talks about the great reversal. It's a movement from believe, behave, belong to belong, behave, believe. And for the past few centuries, Western Christianity ordered faith in a very particular way. Believe, behave, belong. And churches then turn this pattern into rituals. And we can see this from a time of a baby all the way through adulthood. Think about it for a moment. A baby is baptized or dedicated in some traditions, and the parents will stand before the congregation and answer questions about what they believe, and they'll make certain promises. And from there, the child will go into catechism or Sunday school class where they will be learning the doctrines or the beliefs of that system. They would be learning the intellectual content of that religious tradition. It was all about getting the right belief. Then once you had been formed in a particular set of doctrines or beliefs about the church, you could graduate from Sunday school and get into big church, where you participate in grown-up practices like prayer and worship and singing and giving. And once you learned how to behave correctly, then you could be offered full membership, confirmation, communion. Then you could belong. You see it? Believe like us, behave like us, then become one of us. But y'all, it wasn't this way forever. See, it was about 500 years ago, Western Christianity, and I realize I'm giving you some history here, but Western Christianity divided from a single church into 5 different major church families: Roman Catholicism, Lutheranism, Reformed Christianity, Anglicanism, and the Anabaptist faith. And get this, they started to argue and debate. And it became all about proving which one was more right, who held the truth, and who was more biblical. And that began the journey of putting religion in the category of something that one believes or doesn't believe. God was put into a box. You either believe in God or you don't believe in God. And joining a church or a religious movement depended whether or not you agreed with its creed or beliefs or doctrines. Now, it's all a bit odd, isn't it? Because that's not the way most of us function in our lives. I mean, think about the communities you've become part of. Did you ever join or become one of them, aside from a political party, because you agreed with a set of beliefs? Did you ever begin with questions like, well, tell me what you believe about this subject or this topic, then I'll decide if I want to join? No, that's not the way it works. You joined that hiking club or that camping club or the knitting group or that motorcycle gang because you found some sense of belonging, a deepening of relationships. On some level, it addressed the question of who you are. And I hope that's why for many of you, you're part of this free community. And what I can tell you is this: since we've started free, not one of you have requested to meet with me to ask questions like, well, what exactly do you guys believe? Or what are the doctrines of free? You became part of this community because you experienced a sense of belonging. It's about belonging. And it's not that belief and behavior aren't important. They are. But it's not where we start. We start with belonging. And it's why we're more comfortable calling this a spiritual community rather than a religious community. It's why we embrace a flexible theology. Many of us have become convinced that right relationship is better than right belief. It is about belonging first. And I believe this is faithful to the earliest Christian tradition as well as the scriptures. Because when you read through the gospel, Jesus, all the gospels, when you read through them, Jesus never said, come believe in me. But he always said, come follow me. It has always been about belonging first. Now, why is this important? Well, how many of you have encountered? How many people have you encountered? Starting with your friends and family first. How many people have you known that some sort of religious narrative came along and told them they weren't really welcome, that they didn't belong? That's why belonging matters. How many people have been shoved out? How many people have been told they don't belong here? How many people have been marginalized, have been told they're not welcome? So I want to look at a story with you about belonging. And this is a story that comes from the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. It's from a book called 2 Samuel. And it's one of my favorite stories. It's a story about David and Mephibosheth. Yeah, say his name with me, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth. All right. Now, if you got into Game of Thrones and Walking Dead, you will dig the book of 2 Samuel because it is a book that is packed full of action. And here's the background to the story we're going to look at. David is this upcoming star. But see, early in 2 Samuel, David is not yet king. Saul is the king. And Saul had sons, and one of those sons was Jonathan. Now, Jonathan and David, they were close. Jonathan and David, they were tight. David says to Jonathan, he says, look, I'm your guy. And you need to know if anything ever happens to you, I'm going to take care of your family. Something did happen to Jonathan that day. You see, the Israelites, were in this long, drawn-out battle with the Philistines. And in that battle, King Saul was killed, and all of his sons, including Jonathan. Now stay with me because it gets better. A servant of Jonathan's is watching the battle take place, and she sees what's just happened to Jonathan, and she also sees Jonathan's 5-year-old son on the battlefield, and his name is Mephibosheth, 5 years old. Now, if the king is killed and the king's son is killed, who's next in line to be king? Mephibosheth. But he's 5 years old and he's now a threat to the kingdom. You can't make this stuff up. The servant runs onto the battlefield. She picks up Mephibosheth, and as she's running, she trips and she falls and she drops 5-year-old Mephibosheth. And both of his feet, the text tells us, are permanently broken. Now, why is that significant? Because in that time and in that day, if you had 2 permanently broken feet, you were a nobody. You were put to shame. You couldn't go to war. You couldn't raise a family. You couldn't tend the fields. You were an absolute nobody. Now fast forward some years. David, this upcoming star, is now the king. Mephibosheth is still a threat to the kingdom. And David comes to the household of Saul's family, where Mephibosheth is living. And he has this conversation. And now stay with me in this story. It's a little longer than we're used to. So it's 13 verses. But stay with me. It is packed and loaded. 2 Samuel 9, 1 through 13, if you want to follow along. David asked, is there anyone from Saul's family still alive that I could show faithful love for Jonathan's sake? There was a servant from Saul's household named Ziba, and he was summoned before David. Are you Ziba? The king asked. At your service, he answered. The king asked, is there anyone left from Saul's family that I could show God's kindness to? Yes, Ziba said to the king, one of Jonathan's sons whose feet are crippled. Mephibosheth. Where is he? The king asked. He is at the house of Amiel's son Machir at Lo-debar. Let me pause there for just a moment. Lo-debar translates in the Hebrew as nothing. Without pasture, without fields. It is the land of nothingness. Mephibosheth, living in shame, is living in the land of nothingness. Let's continue, just a couple more verses. So David had him brought from the house of Amiel's son Machir at Lo-debar. Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson, came to David, and he fell to the ground, bowing low out of respect. Mephibosheth, David said. Yes, he replied, I'm at your service. Let me pause there for just one more moment. Mephibosheth in the Hebrew translates, his name translates as the dispeller of shame. Y'all see what's happening here? The dispeller of shame is living in shame in the land of nothingness. Hang with me for just a couple more verses. Don't be afraid, David told him, because I will certainly show you faithful love for the sake of your father, Jonathan. I will restore to you all the fields of your grandfather Saul, and you will eat at my table always. Mephibosheth bowed low out of respect and said, who am I, your servant, that you should care about a dead dog like me? Then David summoned Saul's servant Ziba and said to him, I have given your master's grandson everything belonging to Saul and his family. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's own sons. He always ate at the king's table. Now that is a story that holds some power, isn't it? That is an image of who God is. I mean, I want you all to imagine from a dead dog like me to eating at the king's table as one of the king's own sons. Think about it for a minute. Mephibosheth's greatest fear might have been that one day he would wake up and look out the window and see the king approaching his house to come through the door and execute him because he's a great threat. And on this day, he sees the king coming for him. His fear comes true. The king walks through the door, but this king does not respond with anger and vengeance and violence. But on this day, this king walks through the door and says, Mephibosheth, my boy, you don't belong here living in shame and nothingness in the land of Lo-debar. You, Mephibosheth, belong at my table, and my table's big. There's a seat for you, and I want you to sit next to me. And Mephibosheth, when you take a seat at my table, I want you to look around because all I have is yours. All of it. Now go back to the old model for just a moment. Believe, behave, belong. Does it even make sense? I mean, what good would it have been if Mephibosheth believed all the right things or even behaved in all the right ways, but didn't have a place of belonging, didn't have a place at the table? If he didn't belong, he would still be living in shame in the land of Lo-debar. My brothers and sisters, this is our story. This is a story about God and us and belonging. And see, maybe you have been existing in the land of Lo-debar, the land of shame and nothingness, wondering where you stand with God because of something in your past. And God comes knocking on the door and says to you, you don't belong there in that shame. You belong here with me. Come sit at my table. And by the way, look around because all I have is yours, all of it. And maybe it's not you, but you have lots of friends or family or loved ones who have been told from various religious narratives in their lives somewhere along the way that they simply do not belong. And hear me on this. Here at Free, you belong. Simply put, you belong because you belong at God's table. I say it every week. We don't do shame here because God pulls us out of that mess and says, you don't belong there, you belong here. We don't do shame here. We don't kick the wounded. We welcome you at the table. Let's just be honest for a moment. There's a bit of Mephibosheth in all of us, isn't there? 1,000 reasons we could give as to why we're not good enough, worthy enough, why we shouldn't belong. But my friends, your past doesn't define you. Open yourself to a new way. Allow God saying to you, come sit next to me. Come to my table. And all I have is yours. Let that define who you are and how you live. Let that define how you behave and what you believe. Let's make that our starting place. So I want you all to take 60 seconds and engage this question. Engage the question just for 60 seconds. Who made you feel like you belong? Who's someone who made you feel like you had a seat at the table? And I say that to you all because let them know. Let them know this person, you made me feel like I belonged along the way and I didn't feel it before, but now I feel it and you made me feel it. Or you made me feel like I had a place at the table. Put them in the comments. Let them know. Tag them. If they're on Facebook, tag them. Let them know that they made you feel like you belong, because you do belong. So take 60 seconds, engage that question, put them in the comments, engage one another, and I'll see you in 60. All right, welcome back. 60 seconds. Who made you feel like you belong? Who made you feel like you have a seat at the table? Drew, do you want to throw any on the screen? Oh, thank you for that. Desiree. Desiree, welcome here. Desiree said, you, Jesus Christ, our Savior, my friends, my family, Emily Brake. All right, Emily Brake. I don't know who you are, but thank you for making her feel like she belongs. Jason says, when I first moved to Colorado, Tammy Lord, yes, Tammy Lord, helped me feel like I belong. After my mom passed away, Sequoia Williams helped me belong to something which I very much need. Thank you for saying that, Jason. I bet those two appreciate you lifting them up and letting them know. Amanda says, my Al-Anon friends, we are all broken and messed up, and yet they made you feel like you belong. So cool, Amanda. Thank you for sharing. Dinah Slade said, Ryan and Tammy. Well, thank you, Diana. Thank you for letting us know that. You do belong. Jim said, the free community, always. Awesome, Jim. That's what we want this community to do. Ashley said, Amy Moore. Woo-hoo, Amy. Amy made me feel like I belonged all those years ago. Yeah, that's the good stuff. Jamie says, Kristen Epley England made me feel like you belong. Awesome, Jamie. Welcome, Jamie and Kristen. Thank you for lifting up Kristen. Danielle said, Julie McKesson at my first AA meeting. All right, maybe if Julie's watching tonight, she'll get that little boost. Thank you for letting her know that, Danielle. Thank you for sharing. Patty says, my son Nick, Jesus Christ my Savior, free. All these people made you feel like you belong. Thank you for lifting that up, Patty. Glad you're with us tonight. All right, y'all, you can keep putting people in the comments. Let them know. Let them know. Call them throughout the week. Thank them for making you feel like you belong, for giving you, letting you know there's a spot at the table. Always a place for you at God's table. All right, listen, y'all. I want to welcome our guest storyteller, Arthur Vallejos is in the house. I said this in the Facebook post. Arthur is just one of the most like gentle and humble and authentic and genuine guys you're ever going to come across. And he's got this story of what it was like not to belong, addiction, all the things that come with that, and belonging now and what belonging looks like. So I can't wait for you to meet Arthur, my friend, my brother. He's here, and meet Arthur. Welcome, Arthur. I'm glad you're here, brother.
Hey, my man.
I'm gonna scoot over a little bit so
All
we can
right,
get
brother.
you in the shot. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
glad
It's
you're
an
here,
honor.
dude.
It's an honor.
You know, Arthur, you had. We're just gonna jump into things. I didn't give much of an introduction because I want you to introduce your childhood. What was childhood like for Arthur? And when we were meeting the other day, you know, I know there was some. There's some traumatic pieces there. One of the things you told me was you started. I think you took your first drink at 7,
Yes.
but then you just dropped on me that you started drinking regularly in the 4th grade.
Yes.
Not everyone, you know, that's not everyone's story. So walk through that with us and help us understand how all that, what that looked like for you, and how it fed into your sense of not belonging.
Well, to me, childhood was about abandonment. I had a father who was an addict and a heavy user of many types of drugs, and he left us many times. He left us with my mother and drove my mother to insanity, and she decided that she was going to take our lives, and she nearly beat us to death and turned off the pilot lights so that the gas would fill the house.
How old
My
were
father
you at
came
this time?
home. I was around 4 or 5 years old, and so anyways, my father came home and beat the living crap out of my mother. And back in those days, I guess PD was okay with those kind of scenarios, with spousal abuse from man to woman. But anyways, so it was kind of like a little bit of abandonment that my mother was taken from us and put in an insane asylum. And my father, being an uneducated man, turned heavy to drugs and drinking. And he began to leave us behind, leave us with whoever he could. And we had no one. We had no father there. We had no mother. Our mother was gone. And so it was about being abandoned and feeling like we didn't belong to any family, because our family regretted having to take care of us or even let us into their home, because they were ashamed of us, because my father didn't want to accept the responsibilities of his life. But so how it began for me was seeing my father with a needle in his arm, passed out, and a glass of Bacardi 151 sitting right next to him. So I asked myself, I wonder what it was that made him feel that he had to do these things. And I took a sip, and then I took another. Then I began to feel the effects, and I began to just get away from what it was that was bothering me or troubling me. But the reality is that I couldn't deal with the abandonment. And my mother was run over by a drunk driver trying to get her life back together. And it was tough because as her only son, I always wanted a mother. And at that age, when she died, when I was around 5 years old, I had nobody to celebrate Mother's Day with. And I had no other mother figure in my life. So began the story of abandonment.
Yeah. And since your dad was an active addict, and you jumped around a lot, right? You were at different homes, different states, even. So you had a childhood of jumping around, right?
Yeah, my childhood was pretty much drop us off where you could so I could go get high. That's who my dad was.
Yeah.
That's what he cared about at the time.
So somewhere along the way, things changed. I mean, I know you had you could say as much as you want about this. You had a life of addiction. Somewhere along the way, things changed. You experienced God. So I want people to hear about what changed and how you experience God now. How do you describe God now, and how did that happen?
Well, for me, my addiction has always been up and down, and I always use it as a means to escape the reality of my circumstances. But you see, as a young adult, I took it upon myself to take control of my own life and push God away. My father, who was receiving welfare for us at the time, I was tired of seeing him getting high, and I was tired of being in my own addiction, but I wanted to control my own life. So I went to the courts and asked to be emancipated so I can have control of my own life and be able to work for a living at 16.
Wow.
So I realized that this was the only way I was going to be able to support myself and put food on my table and put a roof over my head, or even clothes on my back. But that was just another lie. I began to use that as a means to get high, to get lost in cocaine and methamphetamine and anything I could get a hold of. But how I found God this time in the program was admitting that the circumstances of my life doesn't have to make me who I'm going to be. That I can say that it's okay to let the things that have come against me teach me to grow. Because I forgot what that was like to grow. I always wanted to be that guy who told God, you know what, I got it right here. You could just drop me off and I'll take it from there. But every time I did that, I had the God complex. And I always thought I could fix any situation by just getting high. But I didn't realize that my father's blood flowed through my veins and that his legacy lived through me too. And this time around, I began to accept that my life is a bunch of circumstances and that I could hold on to that sad story, but that wasn't going to teach me to grow. I had to learn to accept it all and understand that it was going to be part of my growth.
Yeah.
So this time around, I learned to just understand that my life was meant for me to have a lesson to learn who I am, and what I've done, and whom I harmed. So for me, I accept the consequences of my life today, because those circumstances are the ability for me to grow.
You know, I think it was interesting, Arthur. You said it's obvious that humanity is my redheaded stepchild, but that isn't the truth. So that's the lie you lived in, that humanity was against you. you were against humanity, but that isn't true. Grace has been there all along. So, I wish y'all could have been in this. We were in the prayer meditation room last week, and Arthur was walking me through pieces of his story, and he said, when I look back at my life, God's grace was there the whole time. And that
Yes.
it's that you lived into so many lies, but even then grace was there standing by.
Yeah, because if I think about the reality of my life, I met my better half when I was 14 years old,
And still
and
married today.
still married today. Yes,
That's
July
awesome.
4th, 1986 is when I met, in Santa Cruz, California. And you talk about God answering a prayer and putting somebody in my life to make me feel like I belonged. Um,
Hmm.
that was the first time that I really got to understand what God was trying to do for me. But I had to use the reflections to see that, because for years and years and years and years, she stood by me through everything. She stood there for me. She waited for me. She cried at night when I wouldn't come home. But it was obvious that God loved me enough to keep her in my life.
Yeah.
And this was the realization that His grace was always taking care of me.
So how do you describe? I know it can be difficult to put into words, but how do you describe God's presence in your life now?
Just accepting that the circumstances don't have to dictate the outcome of my addiction. That recovery is the gift of accepting everything that was, and it doesn't have to be that way today if I surrender.
So, Arthur, we have in this community, as I said at the beginning, addicts, loved ones of addicts, spiritual refugees. Um, I know there are people watching right now who are battling.
Mm.
They are face to face with their demons of addiction, and they're saying, "Yeah, but how did Arthur do it? I mean, he got in, then he got out. He stumbled along the way, but how did he do it? What would you say to the person struggling right now who's barely hanging on? What do you say to them?"
What is so tough that you have to hold on to it? Why can't you accept that there's always not going to be a situation that you have to control? What is it to just let go of the absolute nothing? There's no substance in the idea that getting high is going to fix the problem. But understanding that it's a problem, acknowledging that it has to be something that has to be learned through that problem, understanding your humanity, and how not to harm or hurt or endanger another individual by accepting the present moment as it is, has been the gift for me this time.
Yeah, and if you caught what Arthur said before, you wanted to play God. Your life before recovery was about let me play God. I can do it better than you.
Yes.
And recovery is about letting go of that. Recovery is about saying, when I play God, it doesn't work out very well. I'm not very good at it. To find a higher power.
Yes.
So Arthur, tell us a little bit about what does belonging look like for you today? When do you most feel? When do you feel like you most fully belong, and how do you describe it?
Well, for me, belonging is becoming part of the human community again,
Mm.
and acknowledging that people hurt like me, that we all suffer in one shape or some type of form, and that there's no problem that is greater than the community that bonds together to overcome those outcomes. And when I begin to do that, I understand that I belong, because the things I say, do, or act on can be harmful. And that's how I separated myself from humanity, and it became the redheaded stepchild in my life. But this time I embrace humanity for everything that it is, because there's something to be learned along the way from everybody. We all have a story, and that is the gift, to share the story. And today, that's what I learned to do, is that accept everybody's story for exactly what it is. It's a story. And we have an opportunity to change that outcome when we lean on each other, when we hear each other, understand each other, and acknowledge that we have to share this human experience, and that we are spiritual beings that are receiving all the information we need to understand the experience. And that's how I see it today.
Yeah. You know what's so beautiful about this? What you're seeing in Arthur is what you get day in and day out. Uh, how I was talking about that humility piece, that genuineness, that openness, that authenticity. I sat in some meetings with Arthur, and when he would share, I remember thinking, that dude's just real. That dude doesn't get up here too much, doesn't go down. That dude just brings real. So thank you for letting us in on your journey, Arthur, and being here today. Arthur and I were talking a minute ago. He's going to stick around. He's going to be on his phone monitoring some comments. So if you have questions for Arthur, he is willing to engage with you throughout the evening. If you want to connect with him, have questions for him, you're open for that, right, Arthur?
I
You can
am.
engage people.
I am.
Anything else you want to say about belonging, and when it comes to your story, anything about you, God, belonging, addiction, recovery? Any final words?
Well, for me, it's the reality that even in the darkness, the deepest darkness of our addiction, we can find light. And what that is reaching out. Because when you feel you don't belong, that's the deepest, darkest lie in the world, in the whole universe. But when you reach out and somebody else is holding out that hand, just realize that is the light in your darkness. So reach out. Reach out. Free yourself from the bondage of addiction.
Yeah. Thanks for that, man. So glad you're here.
I appreciate you, brother.
Grateful that you're a friend of Free. You're welcome here anytime. And man, thank you for being here. If you've got questions for him, if you want to connect with Arthur, put it in the comments. He will be engaging you throughout the evening. Thank you, brother.
Right
It's
on.
good to have you
My
here,
man.
man.
I appreciate you,
All right,
bro. Thank you.
All right, y'all, I'm going to scoot over a little bit. Get centered on the table.
Thank you.
Not on the table, just behind the table. We're going to move into our what we call heartaches around here. Because as I said at the beginning, we start with celebrations, we start with the joy in the world, but we also know there are real heartaches. There's real burdens that you all carry. Jason, are you joining me up here? I should scoot back over. What's that? After. Okay, Jason's going to join me after. Jason is here tonight. Jason is the lead of our prayer team. Jason is the one that gathers us all together. If you make a comment during heartaches, you get thrown on a prayer list, and this team, this community prays with you throughout the week. You'll get an encouraging word from us, hopefully. We'll call or text or whatever it is. We will check in on you and see how you're doing. But listen, y'all, I know there's lots of heartaches here. I know there's lots of burdens. I know the world doesn't feel any lighter these days. I know things feel heavy. We're still right in the midst of having racial injustices that we are coming face to face with in many ways in our society. So a new day is dawning. I truly believe that. And it takes a lot of hard work. We're also seeing protests and people using their voices for justice in the world. And we're seeing riots and other things happening that create heartache, that create pain for many of you. And you're stuck wondering, like, man, we just went from COVID-19 to now protests, and I don't know, the world just feels so heavy. And that's why we need community. That's why we need each other. That's why we are one together. So you are part of this community. We want to lift you up. We know, and this community does it the best I've ever seen. You all encourage and lift up one another. I see it happen every week. I see it happen throughout the week. But in order for us to know how to lift you up, in order for this community to know that and others in this community, you've got to engage in those acts of vulnerability and share those burdens. So we encourage you to take 3 minutes, just like we did with celebrations, take 3 minutes and share with this community the burdens you're carrying, the heartaches, where you need prayer, who needs prayer. So you all take 3 minutes, and then Jason and I will come back and be with you. We are back, and look who's with me, y'all. Welcome,
Hey,
Jason.
how you
Oh, it's
guys
not
doing?
Tammy Canaday. It's Jason
Well,
McKissick. All right, Jason, give us a word.
Hey, well, I'm Jason. I'm the leader of the free team, so prayer team. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm really glad you guys always supporting me. So you guys do make me feel belong to this community. So I thank you guys for that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Jason keeps us in line each and every week. Oh, we're this camera, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're this one.
Uh,
That one. It's like it's new every week around here. Okay.
Keeping it fresh.
All right, we're going to throw some of your heartaches up on the screen, and we're going to be praying for y'all this week. Jason, you want to take the first one?
All right, prayers for Aaron's mother. She walks through cancer testing.
Prayers for your mama, Aaron. Thank you for sharing that with us, Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley.
David, y'all know David. David McElwain says, bad bike wreck. I got text from Emily earlier this afternoon. He was in the ER. Bad bike wreck. Prayers of gratitude for the men who helped me and the medical people. Prayers for healing. Glad you're doing all right, brother. Those are always scary moments. So glad you're all right. Prayers for you and healing.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Patty, prayers for the world peace and prayers for those who have lost loved ones during this difficult time. Thank you, Patty. Thank you for that.
Prayers. Matt says, my burden of divorce and the extreme heartache it brings. Prayers for my ex and my children. Prayers for you, brother. Thank you for sharing that with this community. We will be lifting you up this week, and God joins with us.
All right, our dear friend Pamela, we definitely team is praying for you every week. So this is a prayer for Sam as well as easy giving and less family. We lost beloved uncle, father, brother Wednesday. Yes, Pamela, we're definitely praying for you every week.
Prayers for you. Yeah. Jamie is faithful and lifting up the still
Yes,
suffering
Jamie.
addicts still out there and their children. And she knows what it's like. It's why she lifts them up. Thank you for that, Jamie. We pray for them each and every week, and you remind us to do that. So
Thank you.
it's a
Thank
beautiful
you.
thing, isn't it?
Yes,
Jay?
it is.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. All right, Linda, prayers for my oldest daughter this week as she met with her father this week to try to work through the relationships. Prayers for myself and my 3 children as my husband and I in our 24.5 year marriage.
That's hard.
Yes.
Prayers for you, Linda. That's a long time. We'll do one more. Linda says, my family, sisters, and mom who saw me through some dark times during the last few months. I love them so much more than anything or anyone else in the world because in the end, my family tends to be the ones there without judgment and only love. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Linda, and continued prayers for you and grateful for your family who walks through during the dark times, and they're the ones who oftentimes let us know we belong. When we question ourselves, when we wonder where we stand with God, they're the ones that say, no. You're welcome at this table. Keep on coming back to this table because you're welcome here. Thank you for sharing that with us, Linda. Prayers for y'all throughout the week. This dude, yes. I want to mention Reed and Jess Norwood. I think we mentioned it last week, but keep them in their prayers. They both lost their fathers in the last, just over the last few days. So continued prayers for you, Norwoods, if you're watching tonight. Close to our hearts, difficult times. So we're going to keep lifting y'all up. All right, y'all, we're going to lift this whole community up because we know the world continues to feel heavy. Thank you, Jay, for joining
All right, thank
me.
you.
Give Jay some love if y'all are watching right now. Hit the love button. Let him know you're here rooting for him. Did he give? Okay, he already got a lot of love. All right, don't give Jay any more love then. Keep giving him love. All right, guys. Part of lifting one another up and celebrating and in heartaches is because we're the wagon together. And y'all can read about the backstory of the wagon on our website. You can read it probably next week when our app is launched. You can read it there. But I won't tell the whole story tonight. But here's what you need to know. We are the wagon together in this community. As I said earlier in my message, we do not do shame. We do not kick the wounded. If you fall off the wagon of life, this community wants to be here for you, not to kick you and let you know how you don't belong, but to welcome you back on and let you know that you do belong. The wagon is a central image of this community, and it always has been from day one. Back when we started in the Canaday backyard in June of 2018, we had a wagon that sat in the backyard by the tree. That wagon is still here today. In fact, on that wagon sits a donation box. We have donation boxes scattered throughout this place of Free. And really, guys, I say it every week and I mean it. It is your generous giving. Since we're not meeting in person, and we haven't for the last couple months, we truly do rely on your generous giving to help this community keep going, to help this community thrive, and we are grateful for that. So much generous giving on Wednesday at the Pop That Trunk event. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you want to give in this community, I want to let you know there are two very you can simply text the number that's on your screen. Text Be the Wagon. It'll text you back. You can put in any number to give, and we're grateful for whatever number you're able to put in there. The second way is easy too. Visit our website, freespiritualcommunity.com. Click the donate button, and that brings you to the place you can put in your number. And I want to also let you know, upcoming on that app, you can give, you can do recurring giving, weekly, monthly, however you want to do that. And as I said, we truly do rely on your giving. We know from many of you, it's a sacrifice. It's a spiritual practice that you live into. Tammy and I live into that spiritual practice of giving. And again, we're grateful for it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, you'll be able to do it right in the app. Andrew's reminding me of that. Andrew and Tammy have put so much work into this app with Subsplash, and I can't wait for y'all to see it. It's going to be really, really cool, and it's going to be how you stay in the loop with what happens in this community. All right, y'all, we have come to the end of our evening. What time is it? It is 7:59. How's that for timing? Let's go out with the Lord's Prayer. Is this the full one on the screen? No, it's not the full one, but we're going to do the full one together. So I encourage y'all, take one more minute. Stay with me for one more minute. Find a quiet place. Enter into a state of gratitude. Enter into a state of quietness. Quiet yourself. Quiet your heart. And let's pray the Lord's Prayer as we end our evening together. If you don't know it, it's on screen, and it goes like this. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. All right, my free brothers and sisters, so much grace and peace to you this week. And I hope you know, if no one told you recently, you belong. You belong. You belong. Your past doesn't define you. You don't have to live in that shame anymore. You belong. God says you're welcome at this table. Therefore, we say you're welcome at this table. You belong here. Grace and peace to you. We'll see you soon. you.